Okay. Whenever you do a pit firing, you want to, you see here, this is from the metal, the colors. I had a screen over it, and then it got those browns. Uh, these are like the flame shapes. That's from the flames. Some of this coloring might have been from the brown, might have been from the Miracle-Gro. I'm not sure exactly what all these flames are. There's some light blues in here you can see, and some pinks. Okay, so different things made different colors, like this flame. That's pretty cool. You can see the shape of the flame, okay, from there. All right, so whenever you're doing a piece like this, in order to get, when you're pit firing, in order to get the colorant to stick to the surface, we need to make that surface as smooth as possible. And a way that people do that is a process called putting on terra sigillata, okay? And what is terra sigillata exactly? I don't have the recipe with me on hand, but I can explain to you. All right. I think this is my terra sigillata. Okay. What is terra sigillata? Terra sigillata is pretty much really, really fine slip. Oh man, this is tight. Now I don't want to turn this sideways and mix it too much because I want the top level. There we go. Okay. So I made some slip back in the day. This one's green. It's kind of hard to see it. Here we go. And what you do is you smooth out your project as best as you can, make it really, really smooth. And then you take your terra sigillata, which that you made, or you can buy it. If you make it, okay, you're gonna have to look up how to make it, or I should probably make a video on making terra sigillata, huh? So you add the chemicals together, and it's just the type of slips. I think they use ball clay when they put it together. Okay, and it's not supposed to be green like this. This green is just from sitting, and then it molded some. But the top layer of this slip is, and this one might not be water enough, but we're about to check and see. The top layer, when it separates, so you let it sit for a day, and the top layer is the layer that you use. You don't dip your brush in very, very deep. Oh, there it is. And that top really fine layer is the layer that you paint on to your project, okay? After your project is already really smooth, okay? So the project needs to be finished and ready. You have your carvings already done, all the designs and everything, and then you're gonna paint on that terra sigillata. You see how that's real, smooth? And this is a white color, and I'm putting on top of this darker color clay, which is fine. And then you don't go very deep. I'm gonna actually wet this brush so that it's not going to be too stiff. If your brush is too stiff when you paint it on, it's gonna mess up that smoothing process. Okay? And then you just paint on your layers, paint on your layers, paint on your layers, paint on your layers, okay? After you have your terra sigillata, you're going to paint it on there. You're going to go with a very smooth surface with a ball, not a ball, with a stone or with a spoon, and you're going to burnish, they call it, your terra sigillata, okay? So here, and then once it starts to dry a little bit, then you're gonna go, this one's not dry yet, so let it dry. And by burnishing it, this is gonna make it super smooth, okay? And this is part of the prep that you need to do to your project to make it ready for a pit firing. Okay, so that's why I want you to make sure that there's no dents or holes or anything, because when you go with the spoon, you're not going to be able to do it. And the way that we get rid of those holes, right here, let's say those 1, 2, 3, there's those 3 holes. I'm going to be pushing on the inside out. Okay, on the inside, I'm going to be pushing out. On the outside, I'm going to be paddling it with this spoon. Okay, you can use a paddle if you have a nice big paddle at home, but if you don't have a paddle, you can borrow your mom's spoon, or just a cheap wooden spoon would work too, or something flat, nice and flat. If you don't have a wooden spoon, this works well too. This is the wooden, what do you call this? The wooden modeling tool. Okay, you can use that. And it's just, this isn't as wide, and then it has more of a sharp edge to it. So I like the spoon because it's kind of rounded, and I can paddle with it in a large area. I'm pushing out, not too hard, but I'm pushing out in that spot that I want to get rid of, and I'm paddling to get rid of those dents. Okay, paddling compresses the clay, and it forms and makes the shape that you want. So paddling is good for multiple reasons. It makes your projects stronger by compressing the clay. Instead of, maybe some places are looser and you didn't really work on it. So compressing is good. I'm just coming back over here and going with the rubber kidney to see if it exposes any more dents that I want to work on. Okay, sometimes the rubber kidney will expose a dent, and then you just kind of keep going. So there's a little dent right here. I'm just moving that clay over it. Stages of clay are very important. I would not recommend paddling a bone dry piece. It has to be slightly wet still, leather hard, like a hard leather hard. Okay, if you're gonna go and bone dry go and paddle a bone dried piece, you're probably going to ruin your project by cracking it or shattering it when you hit it. Okay, so stages of clay are very important to your projects, and that's why we have the test or quiz on the different stages in the beginning of the year. And if you didn't take the test, then you need to familiarize yourself with the different stages of clay. Okay, so people, when they refer to it, you'll know what they're talking about. Okay, stage 1 would be like your raw clay, which is like what you get out of the side of a mountain. Stage 2 would be the more refined stuff. They might call it slip. Okay, stage 3 would be plastic, which slip is the watery stuff. You guys already know what that is. Slip is plastic. Plastic is like the stage that's perfect for throwing on the potter's wheel, and it comes straight out of the bag in plastic. Okay, after that is leather hard, and there's different types of leather hards. And those are the stages that are perfect for building projects just like this. Now, when you're doing coiling, like how we did this one, you don't want to do that with leather hard clay because you still need to form it, okay? If you're just building out of slabs, leather hard clay is perfect, okay? So I had a little dip right there that I didn't like, and I kind of fixed it. This is going from a square at the bottom to a round shape on top. So I'm going to try to make that round shape nice and round. This is gonna be a flower pot if you guys didn't know, or if I didn't tell you already. Okay, when you do a pit firing, it doesn't always make your projects 100% waterproof. So I'm going to have to, when I'm all done with this, I'm going to have to go back and put some type of plastic inside so that it doesn't seep through. The water doesn't seep through. So finding a plastic that fits in there, or painting some type of plastic membrane will work. Okay. Ooh, man, I made this too tight again. There we go. All right, Terra Sigillata. Okay, am I happy with the shape? I like it. All right. So Terra Sigillata is an ultra refined Terra Sigillata is an ultra refined clay slip that can give a soft sheen when applied to bone dry wear, if polished or burnished while still damp. Okay, so while this needs to dry a little bit more, but I could probably still put it on, and then I could put another layer on later. It doesn't, I can put multiple layers. It's just slip, okay? So I'm going to take it, and when I do it, and just paint it on, okay? And this will help. They used to use, back in the day when they were using this for food, you know, to hold water and stuff, the Terra Sigillata was actually really used to make it somewhat waterproof, or, you know, as close as waterproof as they could get it to. But nowadays, Terra Sigillata is used to make it smooth, to get the coloring from the outside of that flower pot, or sorry, of whatever pot you're making. This is going to be a flower pot. And I'm just going to paint it on. Remember, we don't go too deep. We just want that surface, real smooth stuff from the surface. Okay. And I had already paddled this, so I'm not needing to paddle it some more. And now I'm painting on the Terra Sig. And there's different recipes for Terra Sigillata out there. Okay. The term actually means sealed earth. So that's how they'd get that waterproofing system from it. The same way you would paint on your glaze, you would just put on your Terra Sigillata. You just need to make sure that you're doing nice, even strokes. You don't want to make anything rough or mar your clay body. If you're going to do any carvings, you do that before, okay? If you want to go back and add some carvings, you can still do that. Right now my clay is a little bit wet, but you can still do that. It's just going to take out that little thin layer of terra gelata that you put on. Okay, so I'm going to do the lip. Oh, I drip some in. So sometimes people are like, ew, the green mold on your clay. Mold on your clay is actually good for your clay. You know that it is nice and mature and ready to build your projects. Just like cheese, you could say. The mold on the cheese, well, cheese is mold, right? So you just cut out, well, cheese, you cut out the mold and you eat the cheese, or the part that, you know, looks funny. But with clay, you just incorporate that part into your projects. Go ahead and wedge it and you'll be fine. Put a little bit more terra on here. So, oh, I didn't show you guys, but right here, I just painted over. It was kind of dripping, and I paint right here. So you can see on this top edge how it's kind of dripping right here. Make sure you paint over that, because if you don't, when it dries, or you know, before you go to smooth it out with your either really smooth stone or spoon, it's going to, that little drip will stay there. Okay. So I'm coming in, and I probably should have let the clay dry more, because I'm actually making it more rough. Yeah. But I'm just going to go all the way around and do this so I can get that consistent feel. Or maybe I won't. Not liking that. Yeah, no, I'm just gonna paint over. Okay. Yeah, it made it too rough. So you do want your clay to be more dry, bone dry. Okay, stages of clay, going back to the stages of clay. The stages of clay are slip. The stages of clay are raw clay, slip. Slip is what you use, like what I have right here, but this is really refined, so we call that terra gelata. Slip, then plastic, straight out of the bag, or at that stage, ready for throwing. Leather hard is ready for slab building. And then after that, we call it bisque or bone dry. Sorry, not bisque, pre-bisque. So we call it bone dry. And that stage is when it's super dry. That's the most fragile stage of clay, bone dry. Okay. And then after that, we put it into the kiln, and we call it bisqued, or it's the first firing. Okay. And then after that, you glaze it, and you do a glaze firing. After it's glaze firing, that's the final stage of clay. It's ready to eat out of, or do whatever you're gonna do with it. Now, if you just bisque fire, the clay is no longer able to be recycled. It's only going to be ground down into a fine sand. It's not going to be clay. Okay, so if you need grog, you can grind up fired clay, and that can be grog, which is like if you need to add some sand, like to your sculpture clay or whatever. But you cannot just get it wet if it's been fired and reuse it. Now, bone dry, at that stage, it's super, super dry and very fragile, but it hasn't been fired yet. You can just get it wet and reuse it, and you're fine. Okay? But if it's been fired, you can't do that. Okay, so I have it all painted. All right. This is just going to be my base coat, I would say, because of the fact that it is too wet still. And I'm going to have to come back and repaint some of this on when it's more dry. And then I will go with the spoon and burnish it, or with a smooth stone. Right now I'm just painting the inside so I can attempt to make it somewhat waterproof. There's a little bit of trash in there. Remember, this project is going to be the smoothest project you've made so far. Any imperfections in how smooth that clay is, you're not going to like it. Okay. Now, when you're making terra sigillata, you got to be careful, because if the terra sigillata slip shrinks more than the slip or the clay body that you're making your project with, you're going to run into some issues, some cracking issues. All right, that's how I would paint on the terra sigillata. That's how I would paint on the terra sigillata.